That's fine. Yeah, good.
Growing up, what sports did you play?
Growing up, I played Little League baseball, soccer, tennis, basketball. Most sports I played, and then I went to a summer camp, which was all sports. So European handball, I mean, it ranged. I wasn't a big swimmer, so I wasn't huge into the water polo stuff, but I played most sports.
Looking back, what made playing fun for you?
Well, I mean, I'm probably the non-politically correct answer is winning. I mean, success. That's what made it fun for me. But I do know that I've told my own two boys that losing a very competitive game is a lot more enjoyable than winning a game, 48-6. That those games aren't really fun, and you tend to remember the ones that you lose closely, that were really well fought, than the ones that you do where it's 11-0 in a soccer game. You don't remember those. So I loved winning. I loved competing against players that were as good, if not better, than I was. The sort of underdog thing. But winning is ultimately what kind of you feed off of. At least I did.
Looking back on the coaches that you played for, do you look back and go, "Wow, I was lucky that these guys taught me so and so"?
There was, I mean, I remember a Little League coach, for some reason his name, Tim Halloran, stands out. And what I remember about that experience is that most of my friends, when we tried out for Little League, most of them were able to make, at that point, the major league level. And I was probably 11, and I didn't. And I made this AAA team, and I was, of course, devastated. Like, the end of my life now, I'm not going to play with many of my friends at the major league level. And he was probably like an 18, 19, 20-year-old guy, or kid, really. But made the experience and made making that team feel okay, feel special. So that for some reason he resonates, or that experience resonates with me more than any. I will say that my two boys have gone through youth soccer, and I can see the difference between what one excellent coach had as impact versus one who was not such a great coach. And the things that made the one great were that he didn't have a child on the team, which I don't think is a prerequisite for being a great coach, but he didn't have a child on the team. But he didn't really put up with a lot of other things that maybe a parent would. And my son went through the experience of, this is great, this is terrible, I'm really not enjoying this, to then winning state championships with him, and recognized that the messages and the work and sometimes the parts of the practices that weren't so fun ultimately paid off. And your goal when you get to be a certain age is to compete and win, certainly. And this was 14, 15, 16. So the message was, you have to kind of put in a lot of work, and it may not be all fun and games, but this is the reward for it. And they were rewarded with championships.
Being a parent with kids in sports, how challenging is that to have kids in sports and all the lessons you have to help them learn?
That's part of being a parent. I don't know that it's overly challenging. I think that you tend to over exaggerate the struggles, the frustrations, the aches, the pains. As a parent, you want your kid to feel good all the time, to succeed, but you do recognize there's great value in not being the best player, not necessarily starting, not batting, in the 1, 2, or 3 spot in the batting order, and learning all the other aspects of being on a team, being a supportive teammate, that you can separate yourself from the sort of the struggles that you're going through as a 10-year-old, and realize that down the road all these things will serve you really, really well beyond sports, whether it be in relationships or your professional life. So it makes it easier to accept the frustration and the dirt kicking and the door slamming frustration, because you do know that these are all building blocks to a better person.
To go on in front of a camera in front of millions of people, you're obviously very confident. Did you gain any of that confidence through your youth sports experiences?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think that I tell my boys all the time that ultimately preparation eliminates most of what people say is important in sports, in jobs, is luck. If you're prepared for anything, you can have confidence. And I remember when I suffered a heart attack back in 1998, and I was overweight and I was 33 years old, that eventually you go through some therapy, physical therapy, and you have to eventually get on a treadmill and walk and or run. And I know when I went back to the heart doctor that getting on the treadmill, having done the work that I did, this was going to be the easiest test that I've ever experienced in my life. I am going to pass this with flying colors. So preparation is great motivation to eliminate the sort of uncertainty that I'm witnessing a 14-year-old go into a biology exam about. Like you may think you're prepared, but inside you know you don't know all the answers here. When it came to getting on a treadmill and running and not suffering from it, I'm acing this. This is easy. So I think the confidence comes from being prepared no matter what you do. Whether you develop that as a youngster or you realize as you get older. If you're prepared for something, there's very little trepidation in then going to try to accomplish it.
Since that heart attack, how has that affected how you've chosen to live the rest of your life now?
Well, I mean, I've become a dedicated workout kind of nut, and it just gives you a greater awareness about the things that you put into your body. It gives you a much greater awareness about the exercise routines. I mean, I'm convinced that there's a list of things that go into leading to heart attacks. It's not just exercise. There's stresses. There's how you eat. There's how you prepare. Having played sports all my childhood life through college, you're always outside. I'm always active. I'm running around. You know, I'm weighing 119 pounds the same way I did in fifth grade as I do in like high school. You know, not a lot of great muscle, but I'm in good shape. And then you stop and you lead sort of a more sedentary lifestyle, and you're eating at odd hours. I mean, this industry that I'm in, you're working nights and you're working weekends, and home cooked meals aren't always there. But there's this sort of sense of invincibility that comes from maybe playing and succeeding at sports at a young age. Well, that's never going to happen to me. And you realize that you're just like everybody else. You're a human, so you got to take care of you drive around in cars. You got to put gas and take care of what's going on underneath the hood.
At what point in your life did you decide that you wanted to be in this career path? Was it something playing sports as a young kid? You're like, oh, it'd be cool, or when?
Yeah, that story is pretty simple. I had played soccer through high school, and I tore up my ACL, and we went to a meeting with a guidance counselor when I was a junior, and literally the page was blank. What are your interests? What do you like to do? You know, what kind of floats your boat? And it was sports, and I had done some writing for the local paper covering the high school hockey team. And it was a really cool thing to see in the local paper your name in print, like this story by Karl Ravege. So there was this motivating factor of, well, I like to write and I love sports. Is there anything that would allow me to kind of do both of those things? And that's the communications school. Let's go down that path, and that's what led to Ithaca College and ultimately, you know, to where I am now. So it was a chance meeting. If I was in a different mood, I could have said I like healthcare. I'm concerned about my knee, but it was knowing myself to know I like sports and I do enjoy the writing part of it.
What's been the favorite interview you've done in your career?
Well, the one that probably I would remember most is in 2000. We were at St. Andrews in Scotland, and Tiger Woods in 2000 was the best golfer on the planet. But he needed to win the British Open to hold all 4 trophies and ultimately complete a career Grand Slam. And it was on ABC at that time. It wasn't on ESPN, so it was ABC. And I'm in Scotland, and as soon as he won, I was the first interview that he did afterwards. You know, so you're talking about Bobby Joneses and Walter Hagen's, people that had done just what he had done, and I was the first interview. And then to kind of come back home to the United States and hear that your parents, you know, were watching and your friends were watching, that kind of resonated. Like this is bigger than just you and I sitting here doing this. That people actually watch this stuff, and I would say that was probably the one that struck me. Like, wow, you're really in a unique, cool position here. Don't take it for granted, but it was a lot of fun.
Is the Little League World Series fun to cover, and is that good for kids and that whole experience?
Well, I'm biased because I've been involved with it for so many years, and I tell everybody that, and I'm really fortunate. I do the Little League World Series, the College World Series, and cover the Major League World Series for ESPN. That without question, the Little League World Series is my most enjoyable for a number of reasons. But being around kids, our experience last year with the Monet Davis, who's the girl from Philadelphia, as well as the incredibly sort of inspirational and motivational head coach from the Rhode Island team, Dave Belisle, who's dealing with so many things off the field, but he didn't let it impact the way that he approached his kids and the message that he always shared. You just don't get exposed to that, certainly at the major league level, and very unlikely at the college level. So there's a human aspect to the Little League World Series, and it could range from a homeless kid on the Chicago team that ends up going all the way to Williamsport, to tears after a strikeout, to complete jubilation after a great catch by somebody who hasn't played that much, to a kid who clearly is usually on the bench and gets one at bat, who ends up hitting 2 or 3 home runs at the Little League World Series. You get chills talking about it. So those types of moments resonate, and without question, the feedback I get on the Little League World Series blows away anything I do on ESPN, anything I do on Baseball Tonight, any College World Series experience, because I'm watching it, my folks are watching it, 12-year-olds are watching it, boys are watching it, girls are watching it. It cuts across all lives, and that's my favorite.
That's cool. Last question: do you have a favorite youth sports memory from growing up? Something that stands out that you've carried with you?
Well, I went to this camp called Camp Bowercrest, and it's up in Amesbury, Mass. And they would split the camp. The camp probably had 350 campers, and they'd split the camp in 2. They had what they call color war, blue and white. So you're either on the blue team or the white team. And this is from the 6-year-olds all the way up to the 14-year-olds who are participating as a unit. And those competitions and that sort of camaraderie and that brotherhood that you felt with your particular team, blue and or white, those are the memories that I have of youth sports, much more than rec basketball or Little League or high school soccer. It was competing against friends who you literally would lie down to in a bunk next to at night, wake up the next day, compete against, but then sit at the same table and have lunch with. And I happened to be one of the better athletes at the camp, so that clearly was kind of cool for me. But without question, color war at camp was the highlight of my youth athletic experience. I loved it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
That's great
pleasure.
Stuff.